Hello and welcome to Love Work Life Training Academy, conducting a client meeting live and virtual. As people start to log in, I'd like to thank everybody for once again booking on this week's session. It's much appreciated. If you can hear me, can you please put some comments in the chat room? That'd be much appreciated. As you can see from my background and from the slight echo, I'm not in my usual abode. So I'm out and about today. I've been on a bit of a call of mercy today, which has not been the greatest morning. So bear with me if things don't go quite right today. So we've been working really hard as we start to sort of build out of lockdown and we start to find the new world coming back. August is always a strange time of year for everybody. And what we generally find in August that people take their holidays, and I think there's no difference here or now. So people are taking holidays, but if you start to look at the amount of roles that are coming in across the marketplace, roles are on the up and up and up, which is absolutely great news to hear. I've heard from probably most sectors, and most sectors are saying they're seeing lots of green shoots and some seeing more than others, obviously. But now's the time we need to start to think about what we truly do with our clients. And now it's about trying to understand what our clients' problems are, and then going out and actually working on our clients' problems and looking at ways that we can give innovative solutions to our clients that we can actually start to cure their problems. So the one thing that I tend to find when I speak to clients is they tend to tell me that they don't generally see the recruitment consultants. In fact, they meet very few of them, which to me is a bit of a strange thing, because when I go in to see most agencies, they're telling me they're out visiting their clients constantly. So what that says to me is either the visit isn't a memorable visit, or the client sees very little value in the visit to actually remember that people have come to them. So this is about conducting a genuine client visit, whether it is live or whether it is now virtual via things like Zoom, GoWebinar, Odro, etc. But these things now enable us to actually see our clients more, understand our clients better, and get a better understanding of what our client needs. But we need a process. I was on a call this morning with a client in Australia, and that's one thing that she was sort of crying out for, a process in her meetings, client meetings, to ensure that she doesn't miss any opportunities. She doesn't miss any opportunity to sell her product properly, but also to understand what the client's pain points are and what their issues are. So we're going to have quite a long session, well, an hour as usual, but it's going to fly by and work by. Okay, as I say, I'm not in my usual abode, so I've got lots of things that I'm sort of not working. I'm used to having sort of 3 screens. I've now got one very small screen. So if I make some sort of stumblings, not to worry, we'll sort of get through them. So the objectives of today are very, very simple. The objectives are all about why client meetings are so important, how to ask for a client meeting, how to prepare for that meeting, the meeting structure, the power of a good fact find, why testing your position is vital, when not to sell. And that's a really important one, when not to sell. What questions we ask during our fact find, our shopping list, what to sell, handling objections, and then obviously we'll look at sort of closing then with, actions and what our actions are from there. So let's look at this. Why meet your clients? Why meet your clients in the first place? Again, I hear this from a lot of agencies, well, it's an hour's drive to my client, 2 hours drive in some cases, et cetera, et cetera. I could be out of the office for the whole day just to meet one client. I could be back in the office and making more calls. Well, let's think about why we meet clients and why we meet clients properly. You need to create a strong relationship with your buying point. But it's not just your buying point. As you start to look at the modern world, we need to start to think about how we build our relationship with that client. So if your buying point is the line that sort of recruits people in general, who's talking to the managers above that? Who's talking to the C-suite? Who's talking to HR? Who's talking to finance, etc.? So the more people we have talking to that client, the bigger the footprint we get into that client with regards to our services, the stronger our relationship is. But the first point, we've got to lock down our relationship with our buying point. We've got to make sure that our buying point is a true sponsor of ours and pushes our sponsorship
out to the rest of the business. We've got to make sure that we create that win-win situation with that buying point. But then we've got to create the same situation with everybody. I want the relationship with my client that says, if they go elsewhere, they take me with me. So that is why you need to go out and create your relationship with your client face to face. People buy from people that they like, but people buy more from people they've actually met and like. So meeting your client is really important. To take a better understanding of the job specification. How many times have I walked into a client and actually with a job spec in hand that they've given me, only then to expand that job spec and find out far more information about my client, which means a number of things for me. It means that I've got a better understanding of what I'm looking for. So it means I can find that by design and not by look. It also means I've got an extra edge over my competition. I know more than my competition knows. They might find the person by look. I'll find the person by design. I want to understand the environment that my client is working in, the environment that their marketplace is working in, because I want to be able to talk to my clients and my candidates about that environment. I want to speak to my candidates exclusively about what that environment is like, and to go and feel and touch that environment, I feel is really important. I always find selling my recruitment solution face-to-face is a lot easier than selling it over the phone. I want to see my clients' reactions. I want to see what they look like when I talk about that. I want to see what things I can pick up on from their body language, their facial expressions, so I know that my solution is there. I also need to understand what threats do I have from an internal point of view. So if my relationship is with the line, my threat could be the CEO, my threat could be HR, my threat could be legal. Who are my competitors? So who out there is also competing for the same client? And if I understand my threats, then I can work out how to negate those threats. And therefore, I learn how to dominate my client. I want to create loyalty, but I also want to create urgency within my client. And those two things go hand in hand. If I've got real loyalty from my client, then it will create urgency. If I've got urgency with my client, then it starts to create loyalty. So I've got to start to push for both. Loyalty and urgency are very much hand in glove when it comes to the recruitment process. If your client isn't coming back to you because they don't think it's urgency, they don't think it's urgent, then are they really loyal to you? If my client's going out to other people because they don't think I'm being or responding to them in an urgent fashion, then again, I lack that loyalty and I'm also lacking urgency. So they do go hand in hand. I also want to secure the business, either exclusively or retained, or better still, I want to look for a bigger opportunity. Is there an opportunity that I can sell recruitment services in here? Could I sell an RPO offering, etc., etc.? So I need to look at all these things. I need to get the client to sign on the dotted line what I want them to sign. So to do that, I need to understand my client more. So we need to start to unlock the client's meeting, unlock that potential, okay? So what or why would you why would a client sort of turn your request down for a meeting? And I find this quite a lot, that I see lots of junior consultants who ask lots of questions to clients and then ask for a meeting and get the door slammed in their face. So the reason we have that is because we're asking the wrong question when we're looking for the meeting. Okay, so lots of times we're asking lots and lots of closed questions. We're asking lots of closed questions to our client, which aren't really relevant and gives the client the opportunity to say no. So I've got to make sure that I'm asking more than just simple closed questions. I've got to look at alternative closes to get those in. So I tend to think people, when are you free to meet? Well, really I should be asking, I'm in your area next Wednesday or Friday. What day are you free to meet? Therefore, I'm giving an alternative close to what I'm looking for. I want them to have their diary open so I can start to book time into their diary. And don't be afraid to push for the meeting. It's your client, okay? It's your client's benefit, and it's your benefit that you meet your client. And so you need for all these reasons to make sure that we push for that meeting. So again, if you're asking things like, can I come and meet you? You like to get a no. Where I'm meeting a candidate on Monday who's not far from you, can I call in your office for a coffee and maybe get a better understanding of your business? Gives your client an opportunity to give you a reason why you're coming. You're in the area. You want to get an understanding of his business or her business. You know, before I brief my team on your role, I'd like to do a virtual meeting via video so I can ensure that I've captured not only the job specification, but I've captured the essence of working for you. Let's book a meeting in your diary now. When are you next available? So again, I'm asking for the availability. I want to start that process ASAP. Would it be possible to come and take a job specification from you? Generally gets a no. I'll send you a job specification. And that job specification isn't what I want. I want to be able to take the spec so I can expand it, okay? I've taken a great spec over the phone, but do you ensure to get the right candidate? I'd like to visit your site to get a more in-depth knowledge and understanding of your business, which prevent you interviewing the wrong candidate. Are you free next Tuesday or next Wednesday? And again, if they're not free next Tuesday and Wednesday, as they've got their diary open, I just simply want them to find a date that they are free so I can push through that. So I need to push and unlock that meeting opportunity for myself rather than close it off by asking genuinely closed questions. So let's start to look at that. I need to check things. I need to check things first and foremost before I go to that meeting. So the things I'm going to check are very straightforward and personal to me. I want to confirm everything in writing. Irrespective of whether it's a video meeting, I'm still going to send them a meeting request with all the details. I want to know the location, including the video details, time and date, agenda, and who will be attending the meeting. It's interesting how many meetings I've gone on with consultants, okay, and they've got the location. Well, what they've actually done is they've taken location off the internet. And what I've found is when we actually get there, lo and behold, the client isn't based in that location, they're based elsewhere. And all of a sudden we're at a race across time, okay, to get across a town centre somewhere to a different location. Time and date is really important. Get it booked into your diary, get it booked into their diary, send them an invite. Send an invite with an agenda so they know what's going to happen in that meeting. You're setting their expectations from day one with that agenda. Knowing who's attending is really important because they might bring somebody along who's quite high powered. They might bring a director on, a C-suite person along to that meeting. You want to make sure that you are prepared for that person. And that might mean bringing someone else to that meeting with you. I want to send out, as I say, a diary invite, and I email that diary invite, and they must confirm that invite. If I haven't had a confirmation, I always chase that confirmation. I always chase it straight away, and always a day or a day before, a couple of days before, I'll reconfirm the meeting with my client to make sure that the meeting is still on and make sure they're still happy. But I'm not going to give them an opportunity to cancel the meeting. So calling the day before is really important, but not as important as planning your route, your train times, the motorway, car parking. It's interesting. Dress code has changed and it's changing. You know, I've often wondered what a tie actually is all about and why people wear ties. I've never quite got the answer of what the tie is truly all about and why we consistently wear a tie. However, dress codes have changed, but I want to look at what my client thinks. If it's the first time I've met the client, I'm going to go in my smartest dress code. I'm going to make sure my client sees me in the smartest way possible, irrespective of whether they're in dress down. If after a while I get to know the client really well and I feel applicable to going dressed down, then I will. So I need to make sure that I'm doing the right things. So when I'm starting to look for these meetings, I now need to start to think, I've got to do a lot of preparation, okay? I've got to prepare to win my client and prepare to win my client over in my way. So, how to get most out of your visit is really important. The long lost art of sending agendas. It is one of my biggest bugbears to walk into a meeting and have no agenda set. That means that a meeting could go in any way, any shape or form. If you want to control your meeting, you need to send an agenda. If you set the agenda, then you control what goes on that meeting and your client understands that. You need to ensure that your agenda is sent to the client before the meeting takes place. You need to understand your goals and objectives. Know what you want to achieve and set your questions accordingly. If you know what you want to achieve, then there's more likelihood that you're going to achieve those goals. If you go in half-heartedly and don't understand what you want to achieve, then guess what? You're never actually going to achieve those goals. I want to research the company and my client. I want to find common ground. What does my client do? What do the people who work for him? Who do I know that work for him? Who do I know that might have worked for him in the past? Have I been to the same school? Etc., etc. All these little things I'm looking for to bring commonality into that meeting, which means that I can expedite that sort of getting to know them on a personal front a lot quicker. If you start to talk about people that you already know and they already know, then it creates a nice common bond. Especially if you've spoken to one of those people and got more information about your client, then it creates it even further. So researching your company and the person and looking for common bonds is really important. I always rehearse potential objections. I think, what might the client object to? I think I plan my answer, okay, just in case it comes up. So it's like anything that goes on. If you practice, practice, and practice, once it comes up, it then becomes second nature. So I rehearse the objections which I think I'm going to get from my client to make sure that when the objection does come, I'm going to nail it straight down. And I shape my questions, okay? I shape questions constantly because I want to know the answers, okay, before I go in. So I think thoroughly. I don't want to leave anything to chance. I want to make sure the questions that I ask are driving the information that I need to ensure that I succeed a little bit more. I want to, again, rehearse my answers to those questions because I want to make sure I have the right answers, okay? If I'm asked a question, can I answer the question? If I'm giving the information out, can I expand on that information if required? That means I've got to know my product and my service offering. Again, I've been out with lots and lots of consultants and their knowledge of their product, their knowledge of how to pitch their product is poor. And that leads to issues with my client, because if my client gets that little inkling that you really don't know what and don't believe in your product, guess what? They're never going to buy from you. I need to be prepared to walk away as well. The client's going to negotiate me down or ask for unrealistic things. I need to be prepared not to waste my time and walk away. But I need to walk away in a professional manner. I need to make sure that I've taken in, that I've got set targets and set actions that I want to achieve from that meeting. And that comes from the agenda and the objectives that I'm setting for myself, okay? But I make sure that I've got those things, okay? I then want to make sure I've got a pan, a pad or a pen, I'll get my words out in a minute, a business cards, because they are still a thing, okay? Anything that helps my client remember me by. And if I'm going on video, I want to check my audio, I want to check my background, my lightings, etc., my view. I want to prepare a presentation just in case. I want to make sure that I've got everything right. My laptop's working, I've got a power cord, I'm prepared, okay? Things still go wrong, like last week on the webinar, the internet dropped out. Things still go wrong. So I need to make sure that I'm fully prepared for this meeting. So it's important. I often ask consultants, why spend time preparing? And it's a very interesting answer, okay? Isn't one meeting the same as another is the usual thing I get asked, okay? Why do I have to prepare for each client meeting? Well, every person you meet is different. Every client you meet is different. Every day you meet them on, they're different because everybody changes. So we need to make sure we prepare constantly for that meeting. And by preparing constantly, what I want to do is I want to sharpen my mindset, okay? Athletes train for an event, okay? And they sharpen themselves for that event in order to stay on top of their game. So should we. We need to sharpen our mindset. We need to train more than we actually do, okay, to develop our mindset. It's quite interesting when I was driving to client meetings, either on my own or with other consultants in the car, I would go over the meeting. And I keep going over the meeting. Why? I'm getting better. I'm getting quicker. I'm getting faster. I'm knowing my product. I'm looking for weaknesses and strengths in my partner that was going with me. If I was on my own, again, I'd be rehearsing the things that I'm saying, okay? Because it wants to stop being complacent. I don't want that complacency in that meeting. I want to be perfect constantly. One of the most simple things is complacency. And it hugely increases your chance of losing the business if you are complacent. You might not know what job the client does. You might not know much about the client's business because you've been complacent in your preparation. You can demonstrate to your client that you are professional, and that's really interesting. If every agency tells your clients that their competitors are poor, then there's got a big chance here to show them that you're not in the same boat. Lots of clients think we're all poor, okay? They think we're all cowboys. Why? Because we're always, putting other agencies down. So whatever you give to your client here from a professional point of view is the first glimpse of your services. And if that glimpse is brilliant, then they've got to start to think this is going to happen time and time again, and therefore it should happen time again. By having a plan, you know what you're going to achieve. And if you know what you achieve, then hitting your plan and making your plan come to life, then you know where you're going. And having that route map is really important. The client can't derail you. Structure means you can control the meeting and keep it on track. If you can control the meeting, you get what you want. And you can demonstrate to the client how you're going to control the recruitment process, how you're going to work for them constantly all the way through. Then obviously, the 5 Ps. There are 6 depending on the profanity you want to put into it. Proper planning prevents poor performance. We leave nothing to chance. We can't afford to leave anything out there on the table. So this is a question that I often ask consultants. Hang on, my video seems to have frozen. I shall carry on for 2 seconds. I often ask consultants, when is my meeting starting? And I really have frozen, ladies and gents. Okay, so I'll start when the meeting truly starts. It starts as your journey starts. When you start the meeting, it starts as you go on. I'm trying to just move myself onto the next screen, but something is blocking me, ladies and gents. I'm not trying to. There, let me just stop this share. Okay, so you've got a big picture of me now. Hello. Okay, and I'm going to try and get this PowerPoint presentation back up. Okay, because I'm not too sure what actually was happening there and why it was stopping. Okay, so let's go from the current slide. Okay, and it's still blocked for some reason. Okay, so let me try and work on from there and work on it without that. Okay, I'll carry on trying to sort of mend it in the background and work in the background to make sure that it does come back. Okay, but I think something may have crashed. It may be the internet here, I'm not too sure. Okay, so we need to work from the client as soon as the journey starts, because to me, as soon as the journey starts, that is when I am preparing for my client base. I'm preparing for what's going on. Mentally, I've got my mind with what's going on. I know exactly where I am and what's happening from there. And I need to sort of make sure that I understand my marketplace and what's happening. I have completely crashed and burned, ladies and gents. I don't know why I've crashed and burned. Let me just see if I can find the internet. Nothing is working. Always the same. I'm not sure if I'm still on the net or not. I'm not sure whether people can hear me or not because my whole screen has frozen. Okay, everything has frozen on there, which is really annoying. Okay, so let me just come out of PowerPoint and see if PowerPoint stops. Okay. We can still hear you. Good. Okay, so I'm now back and we can still hear you. So let me just carry on. I'll carry on as this. So you've got my ugly mug for the next half an hour, let's say. So when does a meeting truly start? As I said, it starts at the start of the journey. As soon as I get in my car, I'm starting to evaluate what's going on. It starts when I step on site. And that's when I meet the first person. The first person I meet on site, that might be the gatekeeper, person opening the gate, because it might be a lock site. It might be the receptionist. That person will also be evaluating me. But also what will happen, that client may come out and ask that person, what was they like? I always start as soon as the video starts. As soon as I click the video, I start to think, right, that is when the meeting starts. So I'm there, switch on professionally and work from there. So why do we consider this? I consider the gatekeeper and I consider the receptionist and what's going on with the gatekeeper and the receptionist. And I start to think, okay, how often does my client have CCTV? I was once videoed quite for a long time by a client just to see what I would do whilst I was sat in the waiting room. My view of sitting in the waiting room is very simple. I would always keep stood up. I would never sit down. Why? Because when the client comes out, I want to be stood at their level. I want to meet eye contact, handshake straight away. So I'm always meeting at their level. If there's a receptionist, I'll always have a conversation with the receptionist about how things are going in the business, what's it like in the business, just to make nice conversation with them, okay? So I never sit down, and I always walk around the waiting room or the reception area. I look for awards that they've won. I look for things that I can create a conversation on. So I'm that I'm immediately available to have that conversation with my client about certain things, because I'm going to be walking from my reception area to a meeting room. So I want to have something that I can talk about. That first eye contact is really important with the client, as well as that handshake, a smile. And I find it a bit hard if I'm sat down and I'm standing up to have that conversation. So it's really poor on that front if I'm sat down. So I stand up straight away, okay? That journey between the meeting room and the reception area, it might be a second, it might be 2 or 3 minutes, it might be 4 or 5 minutes. And trust me, I've went once with a client and I lost one of my consultants with me because they went left and we went right. God knows what that person was thinking, what they were doing anyway. But they lost themselves. But they had a nice icebreaker, whether it be about the traffic, the weather, the building, some of the awards they've won, etc., etc. Anything to make sure the process goes smoothly, okay? And this is where structure then starts to come into place, okay? When you get into the client meeting, you've had that conversation, you've broken the ice. So now what we need to do is start the meeting. And this is where you need to take control. It's your meeting, you bring it to order. So you need to start by introducing yourself and outlining what the meeting is about by using your agenda. By using your agenda, and have a copy of your agenda for you and whoever's in the meeting. That means if there's more than one person, you need more than one agenda. Then you can start to structure the meeting with what's going on and outline what's going on. And that all happens by using your agenda. Now you're in control. You want to explain what your objectives are by using the diamond principle. So your opening benefit statement has already been covered, because you've already met the client and you've spoken to the client as you're walking to the room. But now you need to open up the client by introducing yourself and what the specific meeting is about. What's going on? Your knowledge, your negotiation, is it a pitch? What is it about? Okay. You use that to break into the meeting. You then tell the client that you want to know everything there is to know to help them find their ideal candidates, to help them solve their problems with recruitment. You want to maybe ensure you understand what the client is talking about constantly. What you're then going to do is talk about testing your position. So we're going to talk about what you want, Mr. Client, then I'm going to look at what you really want, and then I'm going to solve their problems, okay, by selling them my recruitment solutions. And then we're going to look at the close and how we agree with follow-up actions. So I'm going to have that placed into my agenda constantly. So I'm constantly talking to my client about what's going on. So the fact find. I've had lots of debates about fact finds. I've had lots of debates about what's going on. You're talking to a buying manager, okay? So there are basic questions that we need to expand on. There are basic questions that we need to ask and then gather more information. So one of the great questions that I always ask, I'll ask a pointed question, let's say, tell me how long you've worked there, okay? Or tell me how long you've worked here, and I'll get an answer. Then I'll just answer simple things. No, tell me a little bit more about that. Or can you expand on that? Those simple little questions give you a lot more information. So I want to get to know my buying manager because they're my sponsor. I want to know this person because I want them to sponsor me through the company. So I want to know why they've worked there, how long they've worked there, what keeps them there. I want to know those things. What does she look like about working there? What would our people like about working there? I want to ask those questions. I then want them to tell me about the company. Ask them for more detail about the company. Mention things that you've seen on their website that you've gleaned about their company, and then ask them to expand on that knowledge. I see that you've been based in this country for blah, blah, blah. You're doing this in the press, etc., etc. Can you tell me a little bit more about that? The more you ask your client about certain things, the more information that you'll get. But the one thing we need to be asking them constantly is when we start to really probe into their client, we need to start to ask about what their recruitment plans are over the next 12 months, not what their recruitment plans are now. Yes, they're important now, but their recruitment plans are even more important over the next 12 months, because that could create a bigger opportunity to sell different services. I want to look at my manager's department, understand the manager's domain, the areas that they look after, because if I can understand the areas that they look after, then I can start to understand the problems that they may potentially have, and then how I cure those problems. So things such as slow projects, what's that costing them? Things as being projects being behind budget, what's that costing? The number of staff that they have, the skill set, what's their current projects, what's their current goals, what's their issues, what's their expansion plans. Companies currently recruit methodology. I want to find out how and who they use to recruit. I want to know what interview methods they have. I want to know the success and failures that they've had with those methods, what they like about recruitment, but more importantly, what they dislike about recruitment. Is it the cost? How can I improve that? But remember, if they have a current job and your meeting isn't about taking a job spec, your meeting is about finding out more information for your client, remember, do not take a job spec at this point. We are still finding out about the client. And until we've sold our solution and agreed terms, don't take the job spec. What a waste of maybe half an hour taking a job spec if you then can't agree terms with your client. So I want you to start to think, stop. Do not sell during the fact find. Do not sell at all, because if you sell during the fact find, you will lose information that will help you find the right candidate, because your client will take you away from that fact find and you won't have an opportunity to go back. So you need to really work on that. Okay. So once we've gone through our fact find and we've understood everything that we want to know about the client, we need to test our position. And what does testing our position mean? I want to know if there's anything that I've missed that will help me find the right candidate for my client. Is there anything I've missed that will help me find the right recruit? It shows that I've listened. It gives them time to recap and rethink on things. It can identify things that we've missed that may be really important to that client. But as always, what is important sometimes isn't what's urgent. And this job might be urgent, and so therefore they might miss an important piece of information. So we need to understand what's important and what's urgent, and by giving them time to think. If the client's missed anything, okay, I want them to expand on it. I want to recap that. It's giving me an extra edge over my competition, okay? What you're actually gaining for yourself now is a shopping list to sell against. It shows that you've missed nothing and you've listened and you've learned. You're now highlighting potential objections that might come up. And it gives you time to think and formulate what your sell should be. What's important to the client? What's going to drive the client? You might think your sell is A, B, C, D, E, and you've got it in that order. Your client's importance might be E, B, D, A, C. So all of a sudden, if you can understand that, you can start to hit the client hot buttons straight away. So if you know what your client dislikes and likes about recruitment, you can now tailor your answer to ensure that your sale hits the client's needs perfectly. You're increasing their desire to buy from you. So what type of questions should we ask during the fact find that gives us all this information? Now, we talk about open questions constantly. We talk about open questions an awful lot, okay? But there are different types of open questions. I'm not just talking about the who, what, where, why, when, and how questions. I'm talking about hypothetical questions. What happens if your end client doesn't get, etc.? Those type of hypothetical questions that will lead to more information. I want to ask past tense client questions. So in past tense, when was the last time that happened? What was the outcome? Can you tell me more about that? Can you expand on that? Those probing questions are really important. What happens if this, as a hypothetical question, and how does that work? That little extra probing question will open up more avenues of information for you from your clients. Deep probing, tell me more. That's interesting. Can you expand on that? That sounds interesting. What happens? What happened in that situation? Ooh, you're talking about your recruitment experience there. Doesn't sound very great. Can you tell me more about what happened? Why was that? How did you address that? Etc. We still need to use closed questions during the fact find. And those closed questions should be when you understand and you think you've got to end of a subject. Before you move on, you need to close it off. So what you're telling me, Mr. Client, is this, this, and this. Have I got that right? Yes, great. Tick it on. Is there anything I've missed? Because then when we go to probing understanding, then all of a sudden we can now relist all of these things because we've now closed them off once, closed them off twice. We're now going to close them off 3 times before we move on to our sale, which means that we're getting more and more knowledge from that. Okay, so the sell, moving into the sell is really important. If we've actually understood our ground and we know exactly where we are, we've had a really good fact find, we've then probed again, and we've then positioned ourselves. Now, this is the time to separate ourselves out from the competition so we don't rush it. We've gathered an awful lot of information from our client. It's now time to match that information to our services, but how? And again, poor recruiters and average recruiters do this constantly. They give huge features about their service to a client, but never give any advantages and never give any benefits. So we need to use features constantly. Every business has features, but the feature is nothing without the advantages or the benefits to the client. How long the business has been open is relevant. It's a feature. However, what does it actually mean to the client? The recruitment agency has been open, been running for 20 years. But what does that mean? The advantage is that you are ingrained in the market. The benefit is then that you've got more market knowledge than most agencies. Great thing to sell to a client. You interview all your candidates face to face. Is a great feature. But what's the advantage and what's the benefit to our client? So advantages are often missed by poor recruiters. And it's the advantage that brings your feature to life. It tells the client what your feature actually does and how your feature is actually going to go through. We interview every client face-to-face before submitting a CV, which means to you that you will only receive candidates who have been vetted by us personally. We've spoken them to at length about your company, selling them the features of working for you, and we've agreed with them their salary, the reasons they're leaving their business, and we've confirmed that we've got their GDPR permission to market their candidate to you accordingly, which means you're going to spend less time interviewing candidates that aren't appropriate for your position, which means you'll have more time to work your own job. So it means that I can sell those things. So the benefits are time, money, hassle. And we think about those three things as the main things that we want to cover off with our client, then all of a sudden we're cooking on gas. So your fact find and testing your position phase should produce the shopping list that we need to be selling our features, advantages, and benefits against. You need to prepare to ensure you have the answers for all the objections that may come. So if you know your sale inside out, you know your product inside out, you know your possible objections inside out, you know your solutions inside out, then you're in a good position. Because remember, you want objections. I don't like not getting an objection. Why? Because that worries me. An objection is a cry for more information. An objection is not stopping you to recruit for them. It's genuinely the client doesn't understand what you've said to them. So you want to get an objection. You want that cry for more information. It's a buying signal that we need to work on. So we need to work on handling our objections, okay? And I always say, if you get an objection, do not panic. An objection is a good thing. It provides clarity. It's that request for more information. But I always think about my objection and when it comes. You might get an objection really in the first part of your fact find. And I might want to try simply ignore that objection or try part the objection. Understand what you're saying, Mr. Client. Let me put that to one side because I'll talk about that a little bit later on. But make sure you've ringed the objection that the client's made, okay, and make sure you go back to it. So to handle a true objection should come when you start to sell or when you start to pitch your business. And the difference between pitching and selling is really important. We'll talk about that a little bit later on. Remember, you're pitching, you're selling your services, okay? But when you pitch your price, it's a different thing. So we separate the two. We never pitch and price at the same time. Pitch your service and then quote your price once we understand what service they actually want. So handling an objection when an objection comes, you need to acknowledge the objection. And as I said, either address the objection now or park it, but you must recover it later. But never shy away from the objection. Empathize with your client. Empathize properly and do not be confrontational with your client. Do not be confrontational at all, okay? It is their objection. So we need to cure that problem for them. So I always use this type of way for most objections. I always use feel, felt, found. I understand how you feel, Mr. Client. Lots of my clients felt like that in the past, and what I found is this. And so I will use feel, felt, found, and I use real life scenarios from the clients that I'm working with to overcome the objection. And I mention those clients' names. When I was working with this client, this is what they felt, and this is what I found. They're feeling like this. So I'm starting to address their issues and giving real nice scenarios now about how I've cured that for other people in the past, getting them to feel a little bit more secure in there. So we need to make sure that we are delivering lots of things constantly to our clients and driving those things to them. Because what we've got to start to think about as we go through this meeting, as we go through what's going on in the meeting, we need to think about closing for a win-win situation. And closing for a win-win situation is really, really important. So you need to know your goals and your walk-away points. When quoting your fee, you don't want to be ashamed. You need to quote high. And this is when we talk about that difference between selling and the difference between quoting a fee. That sale, you've talked about your products and services and how that's going to benefit your client. You've talked about what you do in your sale, and you've compartmentalized, as we've talked about this in the past, we've compartmentalized our sale. This is our contingency offering. This is our exclusive offering. This is our retained offering. And these are our recruitment solutions that we could offer you. And you then talk to your client about what solution would be best for the client to fill the position that they have. And once you start to understand what they actually want to buy from you, and you've nailed that down, and you can then give them advice on that. Actually, Mr. Client, looking at the role that you're working on at the moment, I generally think our contingency business will be actually fit for that purpose. But be genuine. If you're trying to pitch a job that you think you could fill contingency, but you're going to pitch a retained service, you're probably not going to get that. The client understands that. But if it's a hard position to fill, or a position that's going to require lots of work, headhunting, etc., then pitch the retained service. If the client's looking for something that's really difficult to find, pitch a retained service, but pitch why you're pitching that retained service, and get your client to choose what they want. Once they have chosen what they want, then and only then do we say, okay, for that service, Mr. Client, it is going to cost you this. And by looking at that, what it's going to cost them, now they can make a choice. Because they may come around and say, oh, actually, you've quoted 25%, the rest of my recruitment agencies are at 15%. Great, okay? We don't want to work at 15%. We want to go as high as possible. Well, Mr. Client, we talked about the service that you wanted, and you've given me the service that you actually want. What part of that service, because you've listed all the parts of contingency, all the parts of exclusive, all the parts of retained, etc., 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 what part of my service don't you want? And you can now start to trade negotiables with your client. You can start to do the right thing. But selling is really important. Once you quote your price, guess what? Shut up. Don't say a word. Because if you start to speak, I tend to find clients can sniff the fear, because you start to go, my price is 25%, and then there's usually a but or an or that comes after that, because you're not confident in your price, or you're not confident in your solution, and the client can smell that fear, and the client will drive the knife into that fear and make you drop your rates. So quote your price, let the client think about it. But I've said, do not drop your pants. Dropping your pants is not negotiable. It is not something that we should be doing. If we're going to have to trade variables, trade them one at a time, and always try and get something in return. So if your client says, I really don't want to do a retained piece of work on this, but I'm happy to go at this position and do it exclusively. Well, that's fine. But you want more now than what you had before. So you want to say, if we do it exclusive, Mr. Client, we normally do it exclusive for a week. Can we do it for 2 weeks, etc.? So you always try and push for something more that you hadn't got. Okay, you don't want to do retained on this service, Mr. Client. If I do a really good job on this as an exclusive client job, will you take the next one on a retained service? Or sell a variable. But remember, at this point, we need to understand what our walkaway position is. If our client is not willing to see the value that we are adding to them, then I can guarantee your client is probably going to waste your time, and your client is not going to want to value what you do, and therefore won't commit to you, and therefore lacks that trust. And what you tend to find is they'll miss calls. They'll stop answering your calls. They will stop feeding back on CVs, etc. And what happens is they then come to you and say, there are 3 CVs you said they're not right. I don't want those, because they wouldn't do the job spec in the first place. So you've got to start to think, if they're going to waste your time, then your time's more valuable than that. Your time is very much more valuable than that. So know your walk away point, but do it professionally. And if you're going to walk away, then walk away properly. So when you close with actions, you need to make sure if you've won the business, okay, and now's the opportunity to take a job spec, you take the job spec. You've confirmed the price, you can take the job spec. If you're confident enough, what you should have taken with you is a copy of your terms and conditions, and you can present your terms and conditions to your client. If the client has negotiated you down, you can cross that out and initial it and leave them with the terms and conditions for them to sign and peruse straight away. You will then send the new terms and conditions when you get back to the office. Or if you're on their internet and it has it there and you get onto their Wi-Fi, you can do it there and then. You need to gain full control. But if they've given you that point, now's the time to take that full job spec and understand that full job spec and do the right things with that job spec. We've got to make sure that we are maximizing our time constantly throughout the process. So we've gone through all the things now that I would normally look for in a sale. So we start to think about the process from a conclusion point of view. Meeting your clients either virtually or face-to-face separates you from your competition. It creates a stronger bond. And that stronger bond means that you have more, I suppose, leverage with your client, and you have more accessibility to your client, and therefore you know more about what your client wants and needs. If you create that deeper understanding of your client and you're prepared to have that deeper understanding, it means you find candidates by design, not by luck. So preparation is really key. And remember, first impressions count. And it's not the first impression of meeting your client, it might be the people that you've met beforehand as you've walked into that business. Anybody can be your motivator, anyone could be your sponsor, anyone could be your detractor, okay? And you can demotivate people. So depending on how you treat everybody may have a knock-on effect on how the client interacts with you. So remember, having a structure will enable you to gather more information, and control is key. So having an agenda of that meeting and having that agenda set out in that diamond structure where you're going to open the meeting and talk a little bit about why you're there and set out your objectives. You're then going to tell the client that you're going to understand what that you want to understand about the business. That is your fact find. You're then going to establish your position within that fact find, so you make sure you've got everything. You're then going to sell your solution, and then you're going to agree your terms and conditions. And they're all part of the agenda that we're pushing forward constantly. So knowing those things are really important. The most important part of the fact find is the client should speak 3 times as much as you. If you're finding that you're asking lots of questions and you're asking more questions than they're answering and they're not speaking at all, you're not asking the right questions. If we forget to test our position, we may have missed something. So we need to create that shopping list. The shopping list that we can then sell our features, advantages, and benefits against. But remember, it is a feature, an advantage, and a benefit. A feature is useless on its own without the advantages and the benefits. And if you want to really make that client's desire to buy from you increase, advantages and benefits are required. Features do not sell themselves. Give them the advantages and the benefits, and match your sale to the shopping need based on priority that you gain from your client during the fact find. When presenting price, okay, remember, present your service first, get them to choose your service, the service that is appropriate for the requirement that they need or the processes that they need. Once they've agreed what that service is, then and only then do we quote price. Once you've quoted your price, stand your ground. Shut up, stand your ground. Let the client speak next. Remember, if we're going to trade variables, we trade our variables one at a time. So ladies and gents, that is the end of the client visit, client meeting, training. Very apologize for the breakdown in technology. Not sure what happened there. Okay, I hope you could hear me all the way through. If you've got any questions, feel free to ask questions or ask any questions to me. It'd be much appreciated. I am assuming that people could still hear me because there's still lots of people on the webinar. I'd like to thank you for your time once again. Next week, I'm not sure what's happening next week with regards to the webinar because I'm actually away. But what I'll probably do is do a recording somewhere and play a recording for you. Again, I'd like to thank you for your time. If you've got if you've got any more questions, then feel free to ask them. One thing I ask at the end of every webinar is if you've got a specific topic that you want me to cover, okay, then please fire that topic across to me, okay, and I'll try and make that topic come to life and work from there. Vivian, you're right, we can hear you, but why don't you reschedule? Yes, I'll try reschedule this webinar again at some stage. Hopefully you got enough from it. I hope people enjoyed it. Again, sorry for the technical breakdown, not too sure what happened there. But ladies and gentlemen, thanks so much for your time. This is Howard Greenwood. This has been Love Work Life. I'd like to thank you for your time.